Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Tales of the Valiant CR Exposed. Today we are looking at the Kobold from Kobold Press's Tales of the Valiant. And, I was going to do another monster. I was thinking orc, but I thought to myself, hey, let's not take a look at the orcs and instead look at the kobolds because, well, it's Kobold Press and let's see how they do with their kobolds. So on the right here, you'll see the kobold stat that they built out. This is our standard CR 1/8 little kobold that is a tricksy little guy and likes to do some damage. Now, this kobold, compared to other kobolds, is a little different. They have a bonus action, and then they have the standard fare with some exceptions here and there. So let's get right into this video here and see what's going on. So first of all, let's go ahead and add in the modifiers. So we're going to have a -2 for our strength, and it looks like a +4 for our dexterity, a -1 constitution, -1 intelligence, -2 wisdom, and a -1 charisma. And then we will go through the rest of this and see where we are at. So we are expecting this to be a CR 1/8, and in terms of my chart here, that is a -2. As you'll see here, -2 is a CR 1/8, -3 is a CR 0, -1 is a quarter, and 0 is a CR 1/2. It's just easier if I use negatives to work through my calculations and whatnot. And it's a pain to have to convert it back to fraction numbers on here because on Google Excel or Google Sheets and Microsoft Excel, they think fractions, if they're left like that, will be basically dates. So, 1/4 could be January 4th, and then it'll add the year on. So it's a bit of a pain, and that's why I like to use the negative numbers instead of fractions. So right off the bat, we are looking at a 14 armor class, and at the moment, our armor class here says 12. So there might be some stuff going on here, and we'll take a look at that in a moment here. If we compare the bonuses, we seem to be +2 over the top here of our standard items. Now, in the rules for creating your stats and whatnot, they don't suggest giving just the base numbers, like a 16 for +3 and an 18 for +4. They just say give the modifiers because we don't actually use the whole numbers. In this case, they also say if a monster has a save to a proficiency, is proficient in a save, they don't make a distinction between, okay, this is base and this is with the save, because you're just going to be rolling the number with the proficiency on it anyways. So it looks like if we compare everything else here for our monster, so for instance, right now, if we were to jump down into our actions here and attacks, with a dexterity, we are currently looking at a 6, and they should be a 4. So it looks like this is a proficient save. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and modify this from a +4 to a +2, and then give the proficient save to give us the 4 here, which reflects everything else going on. Now, you only need to remember this in instances of actual saves. The rest of this needs to be used for proper calculations down here for attacks and the combat workspace. So with that reduction in the dexterity from a 4 to a 2 on what's on paper here, you got to do a little extra math. It's a little bit of a pain, but not that big of a deal. So we have our proper numbers here. We have the AC we're expecting for a 12, and right now our hit points are expected to be a 10 for a CR 1/8 monster. As we'll see here, our expected is 10. And then our adjusted is currently a 10. We're looking technically for a 9 at the moment. So we'll see what happens here once we get going moving forward. We do have pack tactics, which they get advantage on attacks, so we'll go ahead and check that off into the combat workspace station here. We can skip over sunlight sensitivity. That doesn't matter at all. Again, the rest of this stuff doesn't really matter either. We do need to check for speeds, and luckily we have a speed of 30 feet, nothing lower than that, so we don't have to worry about the bonus to hit points there because of it being a slower creature. It's not. It's just as average as everyone else. And then we go down into the actions here. So for our dagger, we have 1d4 plus strength, plus dexterity, to giving us 4.5 dice, which lines up with the average here of 4. And we have our new attack bonus here with the reduction in dexterity to a 4 as well. So we're right within the range of the attack bonus that is expected for this monster. We could also say like, oh, let's put in the dice for the sling. The dice for the sling and the dagger are exactly the same. So it doesn't necessarily matter that we change it all or not. And then for our 2 attacks, again, we don't have to do this. I'm just doing it for the sake of showing how to use the tool properly. We have ourselves 4.5 here and here. Now, if the attack had any kind of attack condition, and I've switched this from being check marks to either nothing, a single modification, or multiple condition modifications, as you'll see in the note here, you can read up on that if you end up using this tool. This would modify the attack by 3 or 5%, but since there are none, we're just going to use the 4.5 for our attacks. And then lastly, we have the scurry action here. And now the interesting thing is that scurry allows the kobold to move 15 feet without provoking an attack of opportunity. Now, this is a bonus action, which means they don't have any other bonus actions and can do this all the time. So, what that means is that technically this triggers the flyby trigger here in the negative hit point adjustments field. So we have flyby here that says flyby or similar traits that allow the creature to always ignore attacks of opportunity. This is a trait. Well, it's not necessarily a trait, but it is an action that allows us to ignore attacks of opportunity. I would consider this part of the monster. Yes, it's not a trait because the traits are up here, but this is an action and you can still get away from players, even though they can still chase you down. Most creatures that have a flyby might generally have the same, the same movement range of 30 feet. So unless they're going up, I'd say yes, they can, this could still potentially trigger. This one's debatable or not, considering, you can use it every turn without it interfering with anything else. So if we add this in, we're going to see a negative 10 hit point adjustment. And then let's go ahead and finish off our attacks. We'll take a look at all the other adjustments potentially here. And we'll say, we're only doing one attack. We're either doing a dagger or a sling attack. So I'm just going to use this concentration bubble because it replicates the 3 rounds of combat. And we will go ahead and add in that 4. Doesn't really matter which one it is. And we end up with an actual DPR 5, which is 1 over, which means we won't be triggering any kind of a negative hit point adjustment. If we were at 6 damage over, 2 over with 6 total damage, then we might actually have to add in this trigger. But if we look at the rest of the hit point adjustments here, we'll see that we have nothing positive in the positive hit point adjustments to worry about. And we do have 1 here because our AC is 1 higher than the expected range. If we look back here, the expected AC is a 9 to an 11, and we actually have a 12. So that means we have to take at least the negative 5 modifier here. So in essence, we will have anywhere between 5 to, minus 5 to minus 15 hit point adjustment. And at the moment, if we look at this, we're expecting, an adjusted hit point of 8. They have an adjusted hit point of 9, probably because the scurry isn't a monster trait and always on. You have to use a bonus action to use it, which means if, the monster is incapacitated or restrained, they can't use the bonus action to move. So there's that. But then again, if a flying creature also has, incapacitated or flying, then they're not flying either, so they're easier targets. I would say this does trigger the flyby trait here for the negative changes. And I mean, honestly, it's only a hit point adjustment of 1. We're looking at 9 from the printed, and we have an 8 here. All in all, this is a perfectly balanced kobold from Kobold Press's Tales of the Valiant here. I think this works out great, and you should expect this to be a CR 1/8 monster, unlike the D&D version, which is terribly difficult and terribly damaging. All right, so that is Tales of the Valiant Kobold. For their CR, checking their CR. So thank you so much for watching this video. And just to give you, if you've made it this far, I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint, or a little bit of a backstory here. The night prior to this, before recording this video, I recorded this video once before, and I put the Dex +4 in here as the +4 variable, and I was like, oh my god, everything's so off the walls, nothing's lining up in the actions, and the monster should only, or the kobold should only be at 6 hit points because the DPR and the attack bonus is all out of whack. And then I went to bed and I woke up in the middle of the night and I go, oh no, that's because they're proficient in dexterity, but it doesn't say anywhere here that they're proficient in dexterity. And then the rules were coming back to me, so I had to re-record this video. And that's a little behind the scenes here if you've made it this far into the video. Yes, I kind of messed up on the initial video, and I'm still getting used to how Tales of the Valiant monsters are created and little triggers here and there that I have to remember, like hidden proficiencies. They don't say it specifically in parentheses, they just put it in there. Because technically, it doesn't matter. These are going to be for saves and skills anyways, so they don't need to have the base value and the proficient value in one place, as long as these line up with the initial scores and everything that's provided properly. So anyways, that is our look at Tales of the Valiant Kobold here for exposing their CR, and I'd say this is pretty much 100% accurate. I would give it, I would say probably around like a 95%, because this is debatable. This technically should, in my opinion, be counted in towards the hit point adjustment. So if I were to run this Kobold, I would give them 8 hit points and not 9. That might be the difference between 1 or 2 attacks for a level 1 player anyways. So yeah, have fun, and we'll see you next time.